So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
The governing body is using the opportunity to directly link the COVID-19 outbreak to saying that Armageddon is around the corner. And in this video, I want to talk about emotional conditioning because some of you are probably feeling very triggered right now. You're feeling like, well, I've thought this through. I thought I made the right decision, but what if? What if I made a mistake? What if I need to go back before it's too late? If you're dealing with those triggers, then this video is for you. Hopefully this video helps you out. I want to talk about how emotional conditioning works and how even when you've rationally made a decision, you can still be triggered with the right cue. And sometimes the cues and the triggers stay dormant, waiting to be reactivated. Our story of conditioning begins with this man by the name of Pavlov. What this man discovered was that if he took the dogs in his lab and he rang a bell shortly before they were fed, he could come to condition them to associate salivating with the ringing of the bell. So what happened in time was automatically when they heard that bell ringing, the dogs began to salivate. And it didn't matter that there was no food present. In my opinion, something very similar was done to our minds while we were in the organization, which is that, basically you're told it's the best life ever. You're a happy witness, but you get trained, you get conditioned. This is the bell ringing. Things you hear on the news. You get trained that when you hear this condition is happening, oh, there's a war over here, this is happening on the news. That's like the ringing of the bell. That is to signal your brain that something is coming. But it's not a treat. It's not a dog treat. Instead, we're conditioned with all these fiery images of Armageddon and, destruction, and all of that's going to come when you hear these reports on the news. And so what happens is we get, this sort of anxious, excited response. And what I have found is that even if you are outside of the organization, you're no longer getting bombarded with those images of Armageddon. But for probably a good few months to even a few years, those news items trigger this response, even though you're outside of the organization and you're not in a position where you're constantly being bombarded with that stimulus of those images of Armageddon. The best comparison I can make to having a fear-based indoctrination that wires itself deeply in the brain is one time when my ex-wife and I were driving our truck on a 2-lane highway, and over the hill these two cars came, one in the other lane, one facing us in our lane. And so she was driving, she swerved off the road, we rolled the pickup, she was airlifted out, I was driven to I had an ambulance ride to the nearest hospital. We were separated for hours. It took us about a month before we were back to work. We were so severely injured. And what I found was for about 6 months or so, I would be driving on a 2-lane highway and I would see a car coming my direction and my grip would tense up on the steering wheel and I would kind of push myself into the seat. And I was bracing for this car to jump into my lane and hit me head on. Now, it did not matter that I could rationally tell myself it's okay, the car is in the other lane. Everything's fine. Rationally, you know that you're okay. But that emotional triggering it took over my physiological response. In my opinion, this is a good analog for what the organization does in rewiring the brains of their followers. In the same way that I was conditioned to see a threat with that car coming toward me, they're conditioned to look for a stimulus and to have a specific response, which is when you see a specific kind of thing on the news, you have an emotional response of excitement and or a mixture of fear. Of course, when you're outside of the organization, there's no excitement left. There's only fear, because you've been told that if you end up outside the organization, you're going to be like Kevin.
Be long, maybe an hour. Is Kevin with you? He said he's not coming, that he doesn't want to have anything to do with us anymore.
Stimulus, the right kind of news events, automatically causes our mind to run that script. And just like me being gripped in fear of the other cars coming my direction, even if you know that Armageddon is not real, that fear, that gripping fear, is an automatic response that you have no control over. I don't know if I have anything to offer as an instant fix. I think it's a matter of a passage of time, and for some people even seeking out professional assistance if it doesn't go away on its own. But at the very least, I'm hoping with this video just to enlighten people as to how their minds were messed with, because the last thing you need right now is to be thinking that you have somehow made some huge mistake, or that there's something wrong with you for beginning to question your earlier decision to distance yourself from the organization. I just want people to know that I've been through some of these triggers. Other people have been through them. I think this is a part of the process. I think COVID-19 is an especially unique situation. I think this is going to be a pretty significant event. I think it is going to be impactful on us for some time to come. I think some of us are going to lose people. But ultimately, I don't think that we need to be afraid of Armageddon on top of all of the rest that we're dealing with. That's all for this video. I'm hoping to see what you guys have to say in the comments, because I think one of the important things for us right now is to realize that whatever we're dealing with emotionally, we're not alone in this.